Hey everybody, welcome to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, visionrecordingstudios.com, and here on my YouTube channel. And today I want to do a fairly short video on using clip gain to manually adjust the volume of a track in certain sections to even out a performance before using a compressor. So let me explain. So in front of you, I have a live recording of a track. We have a female vocalist, kind of an R&B track. And here is the lead vocal track right here. And as you can see, just by looking at the audio, it's extremely dynamic. And the reason why it's extremely dynamic is because, again, this is a live performance. I'll let you listen to a bit of this in a second. And there are certain phrases, certain words that are a lot louder than others. When you're in a studio environment and you're recording a lead vocal, obviously there's a lot more care taken to the environment, the way the vocalist works the mic, so on and so forth, to get a much more even performance in a recording studio. When you're in a live situation out on stage, singers aren't thinking about that. They're thinking about entertaining a crowd, singing with a lot of energy, using a dynamic microphone that they're usually walking around with in their hand, or maybe they have it on a stand and they're walking around with the stand on stage, and their mouth is not in a consistent place on the microphone, is the best way to say it. And so what you end up with is a performance that's extremely dynamic. And you can see here in certain places where you have certain words and phrases that are extremely loud compared to others. And you could say, well, we're going to use a compressor, or maybe stack a couple of compressors on top of each other to kind of tame that performance, which you can do. The problem is if the vocal is extremely dynamic in certain places, even a compressor, you'll have to compress it so much to just tame those one or two words or one or two phrases that the rest of the track sounds over compressed. So one way to kind of combat that, and let me let you listen to this quickly. We're just going to listen to a bit here of the intro and the verse, just so you can hear this vocal and kind of get a feel for the song. Right now on the track itself, as far as processing goes, I'm just using a tape plug in the Slate digital tape, and then I'm using the Slate VMR virtual mix rack, and I'm using the virtual channel, some EQ, the compressor here, which is the FG116, and right now the compressor is turned off, and I'll show you why. I'll toggle it on and off in a second, and then the new custom lift series by Slate Digital. But this is with all the processing you see here except for the compressor. This is no compression on this track right now. And here is a bit of this song here, just so you can get a feel for what we're dealing with. Okay, so just in that one section there, you can hear, and right at the very beginning, and I can zoom this out a little bit, you can see that we have, right at the very beginning, her vocal kind of pops through the mix. It jumps way ahead of the mix. And then her voice gets a lot more tame, a little quieter here in this section, which is where I kind of set the overall volume on the fader here. So I can kind of, so you can hear these sections, but when we get to these louder sections, it really pops through the mix. And then as you can see, when she gets past the chorus, you can see right down here, it starts to get a little bit more quiet, a little bit more tame. So there's a couple of ways to combat this. You can either A, use a bunch of compressors and stack them on top of each other to really try to tame these super loud parts. That's one way to do it. But again, when you do that, and I'll show you in a second, what you end up getting is kind of a breathing and pumping effect, because you're trying to over compress so much to tame these small sections, that the compressor is working a lot harder than it has to. And sometimes that's a desired effect, sometimes it's not. When you overcompress like that, a lot of times you get kind of a pumping and breathing effect where you hear the compression, which is not what I'm going for here. The other way to do it is you can just use automation. A lot of people will ride the lead vocal fader to compensate for that. But when the vocal is all over the place, like it is here, and you can see as I zoom out and you can see the rest of this track, how many spots, it's just really all over the place. And so you can do that with automation, but it would take you a long time to do that. And I'm not a big fan of that. In the studio, yeah, I do. I'll ride a lead vocal fader because usually the performance is a lot more even. But in something like this, I want to do something a little different, and that's what I want to show you today. So just to take this one section here that we just listened to, let's zoom out here. And so what I'll do is I will cut this and I'll color code it so you can okay, so we're dealing with this one section here in blue. So now what you heard is with no compression. So now if I turn on my 1176 compressor by Slate Digital here, the 116 I should call it, and play back that same section, you can see how hard the compressor's got to work. And listen for the loudest parts. Is it more tamed? Yes, but listen to how you can hear the compression.
Do you wanna be my baby? 'Cause this could be more than just a one night rendezvous. You got my heart acting crazy, baby. My head just spins every time I think of you. All of the things you make me feel when we touch, and our bodies are in motion. Baby, slow down.
So you can really hear the compression there. Now you can jack up the input a little bit if you wanted to, and jack up and take the output down a little, and try that again.
Do you wanna be my baby? 'Cause this could be more than just a one night rendezvous. You got my heart acting crazy, baby. My head just spins every time I think of you. All of the things you make me feel when we touch, and our bodies are in motion. Baby, slow down.
Okay, a little bit better, but I hear that compressor a lot. You know, it's obvious to me that that's been compressed. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to make the compressor a little bit more transparent. So that's another way that you can do it, just by really hitting it hard with a compressor. Another way to do it would be to use two compressors side by side and back them off a little bit, which I won't show you here. But again, you tend to hear that compression a lot more. So here's one way you can go ahead and you can kind of fix this problem. So I'm going to shut off this compressor here for a second. And this could be done with any track, but I do this with vocals a lot, especially live vocals, where let's just take this the very first phrase.
Do you wanna be?
The you pops right through the mix. It's too loud. It hurts your ears. One way you can come in here is you can use your blade tool, and you can manually come in here and you can kind of lower this down a little bit. So the word you is a little bit softer, okay? Again, we have no compression on this right now.
Do you wanna be my baby?
A little bit better. You can even do it a little bit lower than that if you wanted to.
Do you wanna be my?
Better. Now the do is a little loud, so we'll try to even that out a little bit.
Do you wanna be my baby?
Much better than what we had before, okay? Now, we're not looking to make every single word sound exactly at the same volume level and go in and cut every single word up and move it all manually. That's not the point here. We're still going to let the compressor do its job and even out the performance. That's what a compressor does. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it a little more even so the compressor doesn't work as hard. So the compressor is a little bit more transparent sounding, and it's not so obvious, and you don't get that breathing and pumping effect. And again, this is great when you're doing live vocals. So now if I were to take that one section, let's open up our mix rack again, and let's do before and after compression. So here's before.
Do you wanna be my baby?
Now let's do after. And again, I'm going to back off the compressor a little bit.
Do you wanna be my baby?
Okay, a lot more even sounding.
Do you wanna be my baby?
Okay, oops, even that, the very beginning of do could even come down a little bit more. It's a little bit too in your face.
Do you wanna be my baby?
Okay, and now before compression.
Do you wanna be my baby?
Hear the difference after compression, with compression I should say.
Do you wanna be my baby?
Okay, it's subtle, but it's definitely there, and the compressor is not working nearly as hard. And it doesn't sound like it's compressed. It sounds more natural.
Do you wanna be my baby?
And now we're only compressing about 3 to 5 dB, where before we were compressing 10 to 15 dB to try to capture those peaks. So now let's do the same thing. I'll shut off the compressor again. Let's do the same thing. There's another section down here. And you get the idea. We're not going to go through the whole vocal track in this video. There's a couple other sections where something really pokes out a lot. Let's listen to this.
Baby, slow down.
The word slow. Okay, there's no compression on that. Look how dynamic that is.
Baby, slow down.
Okay, so now we can go in there with a compressor and we can do that, or we could go ahead and we can just take that one word and let's just lower it a little.
Baby, slow down.
Much better. Much, much better. So let's do before.
Baby, slow down.
So that word slow really hurts your ears when it pops through the mix too much. If I bring it down,
Baby, slow down.
much better. Now if I use a compressor on that, turn the compressor on,
Baby, slow down.
a lot more natural sounding, right? It doesn't stick out way in your face. So that's another way. Shut off the compressor. Let's do one more quick example and then we'll end this video. So you get the idea. You can go through and you can find the really, really bad peaks and bring them down manually, as opposed to trying to, futz around with a compressor to get the compressor to capture all the peaks, but at the same time not over compress the less dynamic audio.
Bodies are in motion.
Yeah, another one way out here in the end somewhere.
Take it. Baby, slow down.
Okay, right there. That's a good example. So right here. So we have this.
Baby, slow down.
Okay, so if we just go in. Again, and the goal is not to get it exactly audio volume wise as low as the words before and after it. You still want it to be a little more, you still want to retain some of the dynamics.
Take it. Baby, slow down.
A lot better, and that's with no compression. So now if I turn on the compressor again, see what it does here.
It's worth taking. Baby, slow down.
A lot more natural. Sounds like it was recorded that way, obviously. So that's kind of how you do that. Now again, if I were to bring this back to where it was, okay, and keep the compressor on.
Baby, slow down.
To me, although it controls the dynamics, certainly you can see we're getting over 10 dB of compression. It sounds compressed. It sounds like there's a compressor squashing it, because the dynamic is such is that the compressor has to overwork itself. Now, again, you can experiment with using, say, 2 compressors, stacking compressors, and in each one of those compressing a little less to kind of achieve the effect that you're looking for. But I tend to find that too, when something is this dynamic, it sounds compressed no matter what I do. And you could sit here all day fooling around with compressors. But remember, when you stack the compressors just to capture these peaks, you're also double compressing all the rest of the track. Okay, so whatever you do to this compressor, you're not only affecting the problematic areas, but you're affecting everything else. And that's where you got to kind of be careful. So to me, it's just easier to go in, find these, in this song, there's maybe 6 or 8 spots where I really need to just lower this a little bit, then put a compressor on there and let it even itself out, and it tends to work. So again, this is with compression before I lowered the volume.
Worth taking. Baby, slow down.
So I hear that compressor. Without compression.
Worth taking. Baby, slow down.
And that's too loud. So if I just go in and just bring this down, now turn my compressor back on.
Breeze worth taking. Baby, slow down.
A lot more natural, and it does not sound compressed to me. I don't hear the compressor kicking in and clamping down. And again, still only doing about 5 dB of compression. Okay, so that is a way to go in. And you could do this with any track. Sometimes I'll do this with bass in live recordings if there's certain notes where the bass player is just plucking things very inconsistently, because again, it's a live performance. You can go in here, you can cut the tracks out, find the spots where it's a little too loud and just pull them down manually, and then let the compressor work a little less hard evenly across the entire track, and you'll get a lot more even of a performance. You won't have those spots where things sound overcompressed. So I hope that little tip was helpful for you. For more tips and tricks and training and all that great stuff. Go out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Check out all the Made Easy products in the Quick Mix series. You'll really enjoy those. And for more information about my mixing and mastering services, you can head over to visionrecordingstudios.com. And until next time, this has been David Vignola with homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Talk to you later, guys. Take care.